Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this legal compliance session run by Kaizen Synergy Law Firm. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director here at Kaizen Synergy Law Firm, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session focuses on the Australian workplace laws and how the coronavirus rules are affecting these particular workplace laws. As always, we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and recorded, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners accordingly. Now, what we are going to be looking at over the next few weeks, and this session forms part of the series that we are working through, is around unpacking workplace laws and how the COVID safe rules around the country are affecting the requirements and compliance obligations that your agency needs to know about and follow. As a law firm, we've been working with a number of agencies, particularly in this space now, where we've looked at policy development, policy changes, contract reviews, employment agreements, also fair work listings and challenges that have been brought before tribunals as well too, and also class actions. And this knowledge is what is being actually shared with agencies over the next few weeks as we work through the specific workplace laws that agencies need to be across. As the pandemic rules start to ease, what we are seeing is an obligation now placed upon employers in terms of managing the workplace COVID legal requirements. So what we have looked at already is around the vaccinations, testing, and the workplace, including an introduction to workplace laws. Where we're going to be looking at today is the when workplaces have to shut quickly because of an agency-driven lockdown. So what we mean by that is while state governments and Commonwealth governments are hesitating to provide and initiate lockdowns, what we are seeing is that agencies are actually driving these specific lockdowns because of what I'll call outbreaks or micro outbreaks within the workplace. Some of this, quite openly, seems to be actually politically driven. We can't ignore the fact that this is an election year in some parts of the country, and where these are driven, whether the public election campaign cycle will drive various governments to hesitate in actually locking down specific areas of the country or industries or the likes. So essentially what we're now seeing is rules being transferred, if you like, onto employers in order to manage these COVID rules. And also this is being done not only under kind of fair work legislation, but also work health and safety as well too. So we are going to be looking at next week returning to the workplace, what that looks like. We're going to be then moving on to risk health and safety and alternative work arrangements, and then also looking at ending employment redundancies, etc., as we move through this. Today, we're going to be focusing on workplaces shut quickly because of an agency lockdown, as well as covering off looking at paid leave and stand downs as well too. Now, last week and the session before that, when we looked at the challenges and why we're running these legal web compliance updates over the next few weeks, is that what we're seeing is that when we look at workplace requirements, it is unpacking essentially a bit of a Pandora's box, because essentially when we look at one issue, all of a sudden we're finding, well, hang on, it leads to a number of other considerations that your agency also needs to look at. So when essentially we are going through the recommendations, what we are suggesting is that quite openly at the front of each session, we will be covering these off. What we suggest is that you review these slides and update your policies. Of course, we can help you do that as well too. We do have template policies that we're also sending out to agencies and we'll update on the Gemba 360 dashboard for you to be able to access. Of course, if you have any questions, please contact our law firm. My mobile number has been made available, as well as our legal compliance support desk can be reached on 1300 360 360 or emailed out at support@gemba360.com. So last year we did have a look at the coronavirus. Last week we looked at the introduction to the coronavirus workplace laws. We revisited some of the booster and vaccination requirements. We looked at the vaccination testing and policies within the workplace. We looked at specific rules, whether employers can ask for this information, and also covered off some of the basic contract rules, as well as the lawful and reasonable direction. We looked at also whether what tiers people worked in, so whether specific areas across your agency, whether they had to be all under a one policy, or whether you could effectively have tiers in which define what rules covered which groups of people within your agency. And this also expanded whether you're a large agency or a small agency of only a handful of people. The idea of tiers essentially could also work within your agency as well too. We also covered off whether there was a reasonable directive that could be provided, asking people to provide evidence of their vaccination to you, as well as what counted of proof, and also looking at testing within the workplace, what this meant, and also the changing of the rules as well too. If you wanted to go into further details of that particular webinar, then we will also be circulating out our previous sessions. And this is also, which I will add, is also available directly on our Gemba 360 YouTube channel as well too, which you can see here as well. There was obviously the slides, and also you can access this general information directly off our website as well too. And we've got the links here at kaizensynergy.com where you can access this information as well. So going back to the slides, let's have a look at when workplaces shut down because of lockdown. What are the rules that you do need to consider within your agency? These slides were taken from Fair Work directly, and we acknowledge these. We will be building on this information and also sharing some of the resources that we also have added to after today's session. So essentially, as Fair Work pointed out, it was updated on 7th of February 2022. We have gone back on 7th of March and also added some further information that we wanted to share across agencies that we have provided to community service organisations. So essentially, while COVID-19 vaccination rolls out across Australia, temporary lockdowns of certain areas or industries may continue. This may well be formed under the work health and safety legislation, where your agency has an obligation to ensure that it takes reasonable care and skill to minimise COVID within the workplace. So essentially, there may well be rules that your agency needs to follow, and we will be looking at each of these particular sections in today's session. So as we've looked at in previous webinars when looking at workplace rules, why is this so important? Well, when we talk of workplaces shutting quickly because of an agency-driven lockdown, essentially what we are seeing here is that there are potentially stand downs enforceable by government directions, working from home requirements, or going to work, or if now, for example, what we're seeing in some states where children may be having COVID, people having to take carers leave on behalf of or for their children in order to support them. But what does that then mean in terms of changing working hours, duties, working from home? Obviously, there is allowances and arrangements that need to be in place by your agency in order to actually allow this to happen. So essentially what we're seeing in some areas in some states is that agencies are going into self-lockdowns because there's been an outbreak of COVID within their workplace. And so, with it, what we are seeing is that employers may be able to stand down employees without pay during a sudden workplace closure that is outside the employer's control. So, where this may be a government mandated driven direction, for example, that we have seen over the last 12 months, or there is a stoppage of work due to a supply for which an employer can't be held responsible, and this may raise supply chain issues for you as well too. Now, stand downs and enforceable government directions should, what we say initially is that agencies should discuss this and also communicate with employees around stand downs. You should also discuss other workplace options as well, workplace options, and this may also lead to working from home and also changes to duties, hours, or work rosters as well too. Now, Fair Work do have a checklist that they have provided, and this is a summary of what's actually shown on our slides here. And Fair Work suggests that before standing down employees, ensure that you've worked through the checklist, which is there to actually help agencies like yourselves make sure you've considered all of the options before standing somebody down. What we have done for you, though, is to also add a further resource to this. And here it is here. So we have extended the Fair Work checklist. We have made it into a Word document, which we will be circulating out to all of you today as well. And if you are watching this recording after today's live session, by all means, reach out to us if you want copies of these resources and information. So essentially, employers should consider all of their options before making the decision to stand down employees. Some of this means that you do need to offer working from home arrangements as well too, but there is also then a workplace obligation that your agency needs to have. So it's not just a case of saying, okay, we're going to be shutting our agency down. There is the obligation from work health and safety to actually consider whether actually an employee's home is reasonably suitable for work as well too, and also being able to record the hours that somebody is working at home. And I will cover off why recording this information is so important. The other part that we will add to this is that where there are changes to duties, hours, or work rosters, then essentially what you should be considering is engaging with staff around what that new rosters or rules look like. Keep in mind that you can't then change their roster rules to say you must work after kids go to sleep, for example. Essentially, that's not allowable under Fair Work rules, and that is something that Fair Work have quite openly publicized as well. The other part that we will add is that where people are accessing paid leave or unpaid leave, essentially there is the directions that you can access different leave entitlements in the event that people do not have any of their sick leave or other leave available. One of the other things that Fair Work has mentioned is that you do seek legal advice before going down this route. We have added, as you can see, some extra information into this checklist, and this is essentially something that you can use if you need to stand employees down and you're actually evaluating whether you're in the position to do so or not. But it will give you a guide of what you should be looking at. With that, when people are deciding to work from home, there are also rules that you should be considering. We are seeing this now where as agencies are returning properly to the workplace, there are having often a mixed model that people are in fact requesting from their employers. So in doing that, you should check if there are any rules around working from home, whether that be under award, enterprise agreement, employment contracts, or workplace policies. What is important around this that was kind of very, I'm going to say, superficially covered under the Fair Work rules was around your obligation to ensure that the workplace itself is actually checking whether people do have a appropriate working from home arrangement. And so what we do have in your Gemba 360 dashboard is a working from home and workstation assessment form. And these tools here are here to allow you to be able to essentially check off, and this brings out the safe work rules that people need to complete. Agencies have been using these over the last couple of years to assess whether people's workspaces at home are in fact suitable as well. And it is all documented that people have actually, and staff have actually completed this checklist. Also, what we do have is a working from home form. And also, these include things like record keeping of what is the projects or tasks that people have actually expected to be completed. And it is, you'll see, all audit logged of when people have actually completed these items, and for staff and managers to actually utilize as well too and have sign off. And you can actually go back and actually look at each of these forms that you may need to keep as well too for an extended period of time. Now, what we are finding on this and why this is actually important, I'll just jump to my slides, thank you, is around the record keeping obligations that your agency needs to have that do apply when employees are working from home. Now, what is important, it's not just a fact of people saying, right, we're now going to work from home, or agencies saying, yes, you can work from home. Essentially, you need to keep time and wages records for at least 7 years. And essentially, these can be asked for by Fair Work inspectors. And also, you need to keep information if people are working from home, the safe work checklist that you've got for their home office or where they're going to be working from, and also what tasks they're actually doing. And all of this information does need to be kept for at least 7 years. I will add that in some states like Victoria as well too, there has been changes to the Crimes Document Destruction Act, where it is actually changed under the Crimes Act, where evidence that could be used in litigation or legal proceedings could actually be covered, and you have a positive obligation to hold on to this information. So what do we mean by that? Well, in this case, things like the checklist tools that I've been talking about. For example, if I look at your Gemba dashboard, your workstation assessment form around ensuring that staff's workstations at home are suitable. So what is the process that you've actually got to actually check that that is a safe place for them to work, that is also appropriate? Well, you've got a work health and safety obligation. And where that comes into it, if I was to bring this back to the slides, is that you may be audited or being called upon to say, which we've had a situation already under Fair Work and also Safe Work, where someone's made a claim against an agency under work cover to say, my home office wasn't appropriate and my employer didn't do their appropriate checks and balances, and now I'm making a work cover claim. So what does that in fact look like? Well, you need to have the documentation to show what you've actually done, not simply say, yes, you granted them permission to actually work from home. So this is an example of something where document management obligations do need to be very clearly managed by your agency. Now, this doesn't matter how big your agency is or small your agency is. These laws that I'm talking about covers all sizes of agencies, and also agencies, you may only be a small agency by staff numbers. You may have only up to 5 people, but you may have a large volunteer base. Well, you would still be covered by this and need to ensure that you've got appropriate documentation in place. Now, it also means that during a lockdown, some workers may also be able to attend work simply because that they are, and I'll just go back, thank you, that they are, for example, an essential service provider. And it may mean that agencies can't require staff to attend work if it's not allowed under an enforceable government direction. So it is important that you be across these specific rules. It also means that also if there are directives that are being covered because of certain industries, for example, aged care or healthcare services, that again you may be covered by certain government directives, and these may extend because of pandemic orders that may still be in place. Now, if an employee can't return to the workplace because they need to take care of a child whose school or childcare centre has closed, then Fair Work provides that you should come up to some sort of arrangement with each of the employee and employer. And this could include requesting to work from home or taking some leaves, for example, leave where annual leave or long service leave may apply. And normal leave application processes will still apply in these circumstances. Now, there is also a range of other leave that has been imposed due to COVID-19. And this can be paid carers leave is available to full-time and part-time employees when they need to look after a family member within their household or needs to care or support because of an illness, injury, or unexpected emergency. And I'll come to that in the next slide. What we also have is unpaid carers leave, and casual employees are entitled to 2 days of unpaid carers leave per occasion. And this could essentially add up, especially in the event that you may be required to cover people that are suffering from long COVID as well too. And that's where symptoms may persist even though the staff or volunteers are in fact not testing negative to COVID itself. And what we're also seeing is that there are now unexpected emergencies that is also covered by Fair Work as well too. And this is an unforeseen or sudden or urgent event or situation whether an employee can't take carers leave because of an unexpected emergency. And that may well be because there's not much notice that was provided, any public health orders that are already affecting. And this is often the case with schools at the moment that we're seeing, and also the age and independence of a family member within a household as well. So what we are suggesting around this is that you use these slides that we give you to update your HR policies and ensure that you're compliant with some of these obligations from an operational point that you need to consider as well too. There may also be now, which we are already seeing because of specifically, and I'll just use the example of schools, where employees can't go to work because they need to quarantine or self-isolate. And this may well be given because of a directive that is coming up. And schools around the country are asking children to stay home if they are positive, and also undertake rat tests as well too, and also self-isolate or quarantine. So we are seeing some rules being changed depending on who this actually affects, and it is something that your agency does need to consider as part of this. And you may well be able to change people's work hours during these times and also duties, but it is important, as Fair Work points out, that you should consider what rules might apply under Fair Work and under awards or employment contracts. We have seen this in a number of different agencies where specifically the engagement process has occurred as soon as possible, and asking employees to essentially change some of their hours or temporarily change their times that they work, and also roles and responsibilities as well. Now, this is something that is changing from week to week, and this is around border closure. We are seeing that a lot of states are reopening. Western Australia as well too has imposed some new rules around these. But again, it is important that your agency simply be across what is changing within these rules. What we are going to be looking at next week is around returning to work. The planning of return to work as people transition back. What does that in fact look like? Looking at changing start times, changing finish times. Also, there is a lot of agencies that are asking now that QR codes from the government QR codes are not being mandatory. What does that mean for our agency? We are going to be stepping through this, and this is relevant to a whole range of community service organisations, whether you run offices or aged care facilities or healthcare or migrant resource centres, as well as other environmental services and outreach agencies as well too. We are going to be looking at what safe work environments look like. How do you in fact manage your policies and also COVID safe plans, and also looking at opening your workplace after a temporary closure, scaling operations up or down as well. And what does that look like for different parts of the agencies as well? For example, people that are working in back off office roles versus face-to-face staff as well. As always, we will just cover off as part of this the idea of long COVID. It is something that we believe, based on our current policy views from looking at what's happening in other countries as well too. The UK, while they've opened up substantially quicker than what Australia has, we have seen that they have set up policies around managing long COVID and employers' obligations as well too. We are also seeing, as part of this, what it means for agencies, whereby a lot of the HR policies also need to change, and also how you're going to manage people that may be taking time off work because they have some of the common symptoms like fatigue or breathing problems or headaches, and what's the process that they've actually followed in terms of being able to manage staff, but also keep their services moving throughout 2022. All of these resources, I will add, is being made available on our COVID Safe Gemba 360 legal dashboard. You will get access to these resources today after today's live session, and also the checklist will be available on the notice board as well too, for you to access. If you do have any questions, we're more than happy to stay online and answer these questions. We will be opening up the phone lines now, and if you do have any questions, by all means, stay online, use the chat group if you like as well too, and we will answer each before finishing up. If you are watching this recording after today's live session and would like access to the resources, then by all means, please reach out to us on 1300 360 360 or email us at support@gemba360.com.